The question here is for all of you is as if elected, what would be your number 1 priority and how would you accomplish that?
Okay. Number 1 priority, I think for me, boy, that's hard. I would say more parent and community involvement, because I think if we get more parent and community involvement, some of the other things, like behavior, will follow. We've got to find a way to reach out to parents. I know that there's a lot of single households, a lot of working parents working 2 and 3 jobs. You know, it's very, very hard. Some parents maybe don't feel comfortable coming into the schools for whatever reason. They've had a bad experience. But my main focus for me would be to improve the parent involvement, make parents more accountable, and reach out to the community to help us. A lot of these students don't have anyone, you know, and we've got to find people that want to help us, you know, get these kids through if they don't have anybody else.
Okay. Mr. McCoskey?
I would say probably right out of the gate, looking at promoting academic success, and primarily through looking at where other buildings have been successful and what can we do to adapt that to the ones that seem to be struggling. We have schools that year in, year out perform well in the testing areas. Their academics are high. We have others that they seem to struggle. Rightly, wrongly, you know, it's a combination of things. So my feeling is, let's look at those things that work. What are they doing successfully at a handful of schools that can be used and adapted in other areas? What can they do to help shore up weaknesses in some schools, help draw out those strengths? I mean, there's good things happen in all the buildings, but there's places they need help. So let's find out where we can take those best practices, as it were, and apply them and adapt them to what's happening in a building and what we can do to bring up that, help increase that academic achievement and academic performance. If it's you know, teacher mentoring, training programs, getting people in, having different specialists being able to push in and assist the teacher in helping students with their reading or math. My children go to Garfield Montessori, and going through some of the Montessori math skills with the tactile boxes and what have you. I looked at my wife, I said, why don't we do this everywhere? It makes perfect sense when you see what they're doing, and everyone's like, oh, so that's how multiplication works. But yet we seem to isolate that in that one building because it has a label. Why can't we take those concepts and adapt them across the district? Put them into places. If someone's having trouble and they're not getting math as normally we would be, okay, let's bring out these tools. How can we assist that student in bringing up their math grades? And I think if we look at those best practices in terms of adapting successful teaching methodologies, adaptive use of technology, that's not going to be the cure-all, but it's a great way to engage the students. I think we can bring that level up, and if we can get that academic success, even if it's small steps. My feel of an academic success story isn't necessarily the kid that goes through school and gets the 5.0 after graduation. It's that child that struggles in D's and C's and gets those grades up over time to B's. That's an academic success. They're learning something. And if we can get that through the building and understand that everybody can be successful academically, I think we're way ahead of the game.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. For me, it would also be increased academic achievement. I'd like to establish freshman academies, evaluate each student at the start of the school, the midterm, the end of the term. We've got to put some measurements in place to make sure that we're seeing progress. Enhance instruction through new technology and online instructional resources. Look at the curriculum and evaluate that. Peer mentoring, I think that would be good if you had the juniors and seniors to mentor the freshmen. Same-sex classes for math and sciences. I'd like to see a pilot ran there and look at the data and evaluate. But we've got to put some measurements in place and hold our leaders accountable. So I'd want to see visually a metric scorecard to look to see if we're making progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think mine has to stand on the concept of alternative education for students who are struggling in both of our high schools and even as far down as 7th grade in our middle schools. I think we have been playing alternative school long enough in our city. We have a lot of small pocketed alternative schools, 25 students over here at Safe Schools, maybe 60 over here in a future setting, or maybe 75 over at Phoenix. But we have to get real about our numbers. Our numbers say that we need to be able to glance back to the days of a Woodrow Wilson that housed 350 plus students, and teachers had their jeans on and their t-shirts, and they got to get down and get dirty and help kids learn and really force students to be accountable, hold them accountable, and then have the backing of our local law enforcement and the backing of our parents who desperately want their kids to be educated. No mom wants her kid to have to climb through windows and steal televisions to feed their family. And so our parents want their kids to be educated, but they are standing in a position with their hands up saying, what do I do? And it's our responsibility as educators to help figure that out. And that's where I think we have to start.
Thanks.
For me, it starts with the idea that there can be no excuses. Let's talk about where we are. Our school system is 50% minority, 70% below the poverty line. I'm told there are 150 students that are actually homeless. That there are, maybe you're going to have to pick a number here, 20 to 30% of the students that have very poor, if any, parental guidance at home. That's the reality. Okay, so what? What are we going to do about that? We aren't going to go fix the community or those home situations in the school system. We got to take them where they are, and we got to give them some skills from starting with where they are and not write them off. I'd be interested in talking with my friend here in some detail, because I'm also a significant advocate of alternative education, because I think we've got right now about 20% of our students who don't want to be there. Now, we can maybe reduce that and create incentives and things to get that number to 10%, but we've got a very large number of students that don't want to be there. And we've got to get them out of there, because they're being disruptive, they're preventing learning, they're not allowing the teachers to teach. We're not getting done what we needed to get done. Now, I don't know about separate buildings in Woodrow Wilson or any of that. My idea would be to do it in the schools, to take and create some separate classrooms, some separate places with the same kinds of ideas. Very heavy discipline, very clear path to how do you get back into the regular stream of things, but not isolate them, because the last thing we want to do is create a path for putting these kids on the street corner. We cannot have them loose and as he says, climbing through somebody's window. We've got to have a place for them. But it's not in the regular classroom where they are disruptive and preventing the other 70, 80, 90% from learning. So basically we've agreed that improved academic performance is the #1 priority, but maybe some differences in how we get there. I think it has to start with discipline. It has to start with removing some kids from that classroom. It has to start with absolute demanding of results from students, teachers, and everybody else. I'm an advocate, and haven't heard anybody else talk about it, of cameras in the classroom. I want to see, I want real data. When there's trouble, I want to go and be able to look it up and say what really happened there. And if it's a student problem, fine. If it's an ineffective teacher, fine. And I'm not for firing a bunch of teachers or whatever. That those are learning experiences. Those become the mechanism by which there are in-service kinds of programs that teachers learn how to handle bad situations better. Teachers learn how to more effectively present their classroom and learning activities. So I don't think until we get real data about what's going on in that classroom, we'll be effective in improving what's going on there. So I want to see. And that doesn't mean we're going to go monitor those and spend 1,000 people watching cameras every day, but when there's an issue, we're going to be able to go back to it. They're not very expensive these days, and it's not a difficult task to do. I think there need to be very specific goals by student, by teacher, by school, by administrator, and system-wide. And they have to be measurable, and we have to be looking at them every few months, and then modifying the plan and moving ahead. One of my concerns about the current reform task force is we're talking about an awful lot of good things. But if it's a one-time exercise, I think we're wasting our time. if we don't measure what happens with that in the first 6 months to a year, and then redo it again and have that task force or another one meet again to then iterate it up and keep improving and keep making it work, that it won't lead to anything. And when it comes down to it, we've got to do all that stuff with an absolute commitment to no further tax increases. We got the 1% sales tax, we've got the money for our buildings, we've got the property tax budget. Unless there's some horrendous thing happen, like the state saying all pension plans now have to be local, or we are no longer going to fund busing or any way to transport your students, those are separate issues. But in a normal course of things, whatever we need to do, we reallocate resources and get them done. I'm not for a big tax cut. I'm only saying, under no circumstances, we promised the world we wouldn't increase them, and we must not.
Thanks.
Thank you. My heart says I would love to say academic achievement. You know, what I really understand is that you can't have that until we have safe schools, have a welcoming environment where our kids feel safe, where as a parent I can say, are my kids safe every day, and do I feel good about them being in the learning environment that they're at? Is there a learning environment that my kid can learn, as well as can the teacher teach? And so I would assume that from hearing it from the community and for myself, I would say that safe schools would be my number one priority. That will help those things that we want to work on later on, which is the budget and climate, and the academic achievement will come. It'll come when the people in our community feel good about our schools. We can't grow Decatur until we find out that everyone is being positive about when new people come to Decatur Public Schools, be part of our program, rather than maybe pushing them out to one of our color type of school districts. So how do we direct and change the mindset, the perception of what's happening in our schools? We've got a lot of good things going on. It's not bad all the time. There are certain situations that happen that make the media. There are things that aren't right, and kids go home and tell their parents about things that are true, that do happen, and that does scare people. So what do? Well, we have to set a mindset within our building and our administration of how to control those issues so that we don't have things happen, especially on a daily basis. Why are things happening? Well, sometimes it has to do with how you look at the code of conduct and how you actually apply what's going on in your classroom, and how you apply those things as an administrator, and are those things being directed from a central office? How do we deal with issues that happen? If there's fights in our building, if there are people are constantly truant, how do you handle those things? I think what I keep hearing is that people want us to be stronger on those issues. Be tougher on those issues. Kids need to come to school. Kids need to behave. They need to have a positive attitude when they're there. And when they do break a rule, then there needs to be something that happens, a consequence that we follow up on. There are things that we really need to do. Not everyone's going to come to school and be happy about that. We got to find ways to deal with those kids in areas like alternative education. We don't want anybody out on the street, but we also don't want people in a classroom that disrupts so the kids can't learn. Got to have parents feel good about their school and be involved. When they walk into our buildings, they need to feel the comfort and welcoming of our school. As they walk down the hallways, they got to feel that the kids are happy to be there. We have to work real hard with our administration on the actions that they do when it comes to following the code of conduct. We need to put some other pieces in place so that it's easier for them to deal with the circumstances, and it's easier for parents to understand what's happening, and then basically come out and say, these are the things that our expectations are for our students, and we follow and keep those, and we stay strong with that, and we don't waver. Kids are just, raising kids at home is just like having kids at school. When you're firm on what you believe, and kids follow what you do, you're not going to have nearly the problems as if you waver back and forth and you're not consistent. So I think consistency, follow-up, and support are the biggest things that we need to have. Plus, we need to look at different alternative ways to handle kids that aren't going to be at school. I agree wholeheartedly with Cordell, and there are some students that aren't going to be successful in the environment that we have today. We need to change that and find places for them and help them. Bring our community in. There are things that need to happen where our community can be a great help with certain kids in certain times that we probably haven't taken advantage of in the past. We don't have unlimited resources. When we have people in our community that will help, we need to take advantage of those.
Thanks.
It's much more fun to be on this end than your end. Number one priority is the kids. Everything else goes around them. So we can start from the very top. Parental involvement. Did you ever try to get a parent to a school where Johnny wasn't performing or somebody wasn't getting fed? It's like dragging a horse to a well. For some reason, parents are the most difficult people to get in a building. You get them in there once or twice, you get them hooked. But parental involvement has been a problem for as long as I have been dealing with any school district. We talk about academic success. We replaced 6 elementary principals with people that we felt would be more productive, that would increase the achievement at the school, that would correct what we deem to be insufficiencies at the school to try and improve the test results. I have Freshman Academy, we talked about that before, and some of these ideas are the same. Cordell's idea of alternative education, there's all sorts of ways to look at alternative ed. We've gone through the Phoenix program. The Phoenix program is Tom Hanks's money pit. It is the most expensive thing you can possibly do in education. That school for 50 kids costs probably more than a school of 350 kids. We cannot throw kids out of school because they don't want to learn. We offer GED programs. We offer tech programs. We offer anything we can do to try and make them successful. We are in no way ever trying to put anybody on the street, but there have been times in expulsion hearings for the good of the district. We have done it, and we will do it again. We talk about discipline, cameras in the classroom. I imagine the teachers union would look like kind of like Madison again if you did that. So why I think that's a good idea. I think we have quality teachers. I think a large percentage of the teachers never have a problem. We have installed better teacher evaluation tools, better principal evaluation tools, so that these teachers are being monitored better, they're being mentored better, they're being trained better. And we have a strategic plan that for 5 years that's constantly updated, that deals with things like the discipline policy. Our discipline policy, we had an option years ago. The big rage was to have no tolerance. Well, that's why a school in Virginia just expelled 2 kids for possession of oregano. Honor students, both of them. No tolerance, oregano, you go. Indicator, the board has the final decision. I hear about individual plans, IEPs for individual students. We don't have enough people to do it. And when you realize that 90% of our budget are employee salaries, benefits, and related items, and we have 10% left of our $100 million to do everything else, there's a trade-off that we're forced to do. We just riffed 100 people. 30 some of them were Tech Academy, a number of them were retired teachers. There was not one successfully evaluated full-time teacher riffed in this district for the 2nd year in a row. Find another district that can say that. Truancy ultimately is the responsibility of the ROE. We have student services that work on it consistently. Overwhelmingly difficult problem. Community help, the Caring Black Men group in both high schools as a outreach to the black youth that are showing excellent results. I was in one of their initial meetings when they were planning what they were going to do. There are a phenomenal number of things we would love to do. Unfortunately, Governor Quinn has locked his checkbook up. The federal money is dried up. Grant money is drying up. And we are trying to provide the best we got with what we got without hitting the taxpayers any harder than they've been hit.